According to the United States Constitution, Article 2, right to bear arms, quote, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, close quote. There is a group of people that are recently deciding that they too can utilize the Second Amendment. I'm Tyrone Bowman. This is Tyrone Bowman Tonight. The topic of discussion: why more black people are looking for safety in gun ownership. I read an article written by Curtis Dunn of CBS News, Curtis Bunn rather, of CBS News. So I'm going to quote. Let's get started. Quote, a rise in hate crimes and anti-black vitriolic sparked a 58% increase in black people purchasing firearms in 2020. The spike seems to have continued. Quote, 2 days after a white man shot and killed 10 black people in Buffalo last month, Michael Moody reversed his thinking about possessing a firearm. He had watched the aftermath of the carnage on the news, the anguish of the victims' quote families, and decided he quote needed a gun, needed, not wanted, close quote, he said. After discussing it with his wife, Moody said he left his home in suburban Washington to buy a weapon. He quickly learned he wasn't alone. He said he was, quote, stunned, close quote, at the number of black people standing in line at the gun shop in Maryland to make a similar purchase. Through chatting with others while waiting, Moody said he learned, quote, a lot of us have the same idea. It's getting bad when someone specifically targets black people to shoot. We have to be prepared to fight back, and you can't survive bringing a knife to a gunfight, close quote. Moody's sentiments represent one reason the sale of guns to black Americans rose 58% in 2020. The year George Floyd was murdered by Minnesota police officers, sparking a nationwide social justice movement. According to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, a firearms trade association, it was the highest bump in gun sales of any ethnic group that year. Further, in the first quarter of 2020, another NSSF report revealed 90% of gun retailers reported a general increase of black customers, including an 80% increase among black women. Quote, and you wonder why, close quote, said Moody, who works for the federal government. Quote, you look at the Buffalo and the feeling of this, quote, this could have been me, is there. We could be the next target, and when it's you, what are you going to do? Are you going to run and hide, or are you going to be able to protect yourself, protect your family? I didn't want a gun. I'm not a gun person, but this world has made me get one. Getting one for my wife next, close quote. The foundation said 40% of the overall gun sales in 2020 were to first-time gun purchasers. Black gun owners, old and new, say the rise is a byproduct primarily of a heightened fear they could be targeted like those in Buffalo or at Emmanuel AME, American Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015, when 9 black church members were killed by a white supremacist. To that point, anti-black hate crimes rose nearly 40% in 2020. The latest year available according to FBI statistics. There were 2,755 reported incidents targeting black people in the U.S. that year, the most besieged racial group by a large margin. 2 weeks after the January 6, 2021 riot on the Capitol in Washington, Destiny Hawkins, a divorced mother of one who lives near Atlanta, waited in line to purchase her first gun, a Glock 43. Quote, "It wasn't the gun I wanted because their selection was so low," close quote. They're so low. "People were buying guns like crazy," quote, she said. Quote, "But seemingly those people climbed the walls and attacked the Capitol. On top of all the other shootings of black people just confirmed why I stood in the cold and got my firearm. The bottom line is that we have to protect ourselves and our homes, but we purchase guns differently," close quote. Hawkins said, stressing the sense that more black people are buying guns for the sake of protection against racial attacks. Quote, "I drove a long way to take safety classes," close quote, she added. Quote, "I went to the range," close quote. The increased interest in firearms delights Philip Smith, who started the National African American Gun Association in 2015. A human resources executive in Atlanta, Smith said he owns, quote, "about 30 weapons, including the lethal AR-15 style rifles used in the Buffalo mass shooting and the Uvalde Elementary School massacre in Texas on May 24. The increased number of black gun ownership represents, quote, "an awakening," close quote, Smith said. Quote, "It's a valuable add to the family household as opposed to, let's say, 10 years ago or 6 years ago. This is a movement in a certain direction, and I think it's a good direction," close quote. Let me shift my chair a little bit here so I can get comfortable on doing all this reading. His organization has 48,000 members nationwide, he said, and has gained more than 1,000 or more each month since 2020. It has nearly 107,000 followers on Facebook, Smith said. The murder of Floyd, compounded by the myriad shootings of black men and women by white police officers, vigilantes, and the like, sparked the surge. Quote, "There's been a polarization racially and politically that's driving that narrative for black people. Purchasing guns for protection," Smith said. "Folks are saying they don't want to be out in public without a gun, or they might end up like Ahmaud Arbery or Trayvon Martin or countless others who have been killed in the streets." See, Forreston developed an affinity for guns when she was growing up in rural Petersburg, Virginia. Her father, grandfather, and uncles all carried guns and taught her how to use one. The owner of 3 firearms, Parsons started a Facebook group called Black Women with Guns as a way of subtly encouraging her peers to embrace arming themselves. Quote, "It's a safe space for black women to come to be educated about gun usage, gun safety, and protecting yourselves," close quote. Parsons said, quote, "It's a Sisters in Arms space. We are taking a step to make sure our families are safe. A lot of people of color don't necessarily want firearms in their possessions or anywhere near their children or their family because of fear something could happen. A lot of that is about not knowing about gun safety. But the numbers are going up because of one thing: black people, black women included, want to protect themselves," close quote. Smith of the Gun Association said the pandemic and the racial justice movement created an atmosphere that pushed black people to legally arm themselves, and it's not slowing down. Quote, "During the heart of COVID, I heard from so many people asking me to suggest guns for them to buy," close quote, he said. He said they were scared about, quote, "the social breakdown, mob violence, shortage of food, gas prices rising, lines were long. Then there's the social unrest that's going on, and those forces make our community collectively say, quote, 'You know what? I'm going to get a gun,' close quote." And I think all that is a good thing. Close quote. Never surrender, never quit.